Namaste students. In this video, we'll be discussing concept of justice, procedural justice and distributive justice. We'll divide this lecture into three parts. Primarily, we'll discuss concept of justice, exclusively social justice and how this idea emerged. Then we'll move on to distributive justice and procedural justice. And finally, we'll try to understand, is this idea alien to Indian context or not? So, to begin with, the idea of justice, we have seen in our daily life that it's not a very unknown word. We come across these words every day. But what we usually understand by justice, we usually understand a person sitting in a courtroom who is listening to the conflicting parties, and at the end, based on the facts and evidences, he or she is coming with some decisions that we are supposed to abide by. It's all about conflict resolutions based on facts and evidences. But this is precisely the idea of legal justice. Along with this, we also come across every day words like vigilante justice or words like poetic justice. But in the study of social science, we are much more interested on the idea of social justice, or even in political science precisely, we want to study or we need to study social justice. Now the question is, why social justice is important, or rather, what is social justice and why should we study social justice in political science? Precisely, political science is all about what we get, how we get, and when we get. So, and what is social justice? Social justice is the way someone gets those resources in the society. Say, for example, if I feel that I do not have proper access to the social resources, particularly because someone else is grabbing it, so the distribution system in the society is not working properly. So in that case, what I should do, I should question the very distribution system of the society. That means social justice is not there. If you think of when political parties and their representatives come to your doorstep and claim that they ask for your vote, they promise some kind of development in your society, in your neighborhood, in your community, and finally that will lead to your individualistic development. Precisely what does it mean? It means that these social deserts or social resources will be open for you. If it is restricted to one strata of the society, let it be now open for everyone. For a long time in our society or even Western society, the approach was extremely elitist. Look at pre-French revolutionary society in France. It was said that most of the people, say 20% of the people, had access to or grabbed 80% of the resources, and 80% of the resources had 20% of the 80% of the people had 20% resources. So it means that social justice is not there. So social justice is all about distribution and redistribution of the social wealth. So this distribution system is controlled absolutely by the people ultimately, and that is why it's the question of politics, and that is why we, the students of political science, need to understand social justice or social injustice in that sense, because otherwise these injustice, these issues can ventilate in many ways. Like it can create rebellions, it can change regimes, it can do whatever it can. I mean, there are plenty of ways to ventilate or to channelize these depressions in society. But we should understand that who gets what, when, and how. This is extremely individualistic understanding. Whether there is social justice or not, it's not the question of just an individual. Social justice is all about the question of the distribution pattern, on the basis of which we can expect that individuals in the society will be leading a meaningful or good life or a dignified life. So, unlike the this legal justice system, there is no essentially this blindfold approach. Here, social justice is not essentially blind or neutral against whoever. Like it may be a bit biased towards poor, towards the marginalized, and it's not just about facts and evidences, or it's not about punishments. So it may think about privilege, it may think about prioritizing the marginalized section. So we need to understand here that social justice should not be understood the way we understand legal justice, extremely rigid, based on facts and evidences, and blindfold, neutral. No, social justice is not. Social justice is much more caring. It's much more adaptive. It's much more. It embraces everyone, and it's not rigid on the question of equality of opportunity. It's rather focusing on equality of outcome. In the idea of social justice, 4 pillars are there. First of all, it thinks about desert, and primarily social justice thinkers, they were not very comfortable with the idea of desert. Now, what I mean by desert, in society there are some issues or some resources, some advantages that is somehow monopolized to some people. Now, if I am more hardworking or more industrious, then do I deserve more salary than my co-workers? Now, this is the idea of a desert. If I work more, I should get more. It does not depend on my need. How Marx have often addressed this issue. But later thinkers like John Rawls have almost punched these 2 ideas together like need and desert. He has replaced and accepted the idea of social desert, and he says that yes, deserts are okay if it somehow helps the marginalized section. And in today's understanding, in the doctrine or in the discourse of social justice, we find that desert is fine, and it is almost like the social needs, like health facilities or access to education. These are considered as desert today, and it's perfectly all right with these thinkers like John Rawls. Social justice thinkers also talk about rights, but right not just in legal way, that you have some right, if you are denied of right, you can go to court. But social rights or social justice thinkers, they argue that it's not just about legal right. The question is whether you have right to right approach or not. That means that in any society, if a poor man is denied of his right, can he really afford to go to court? So the social distribution system should be like that he is or he or she should be empowered at least in that way that he can talk about, claim, and understand and be cautious about what his or her rights are. Finally, social justice thinkers, they talk about the question of equality. And this equality is not a rigid idea of equality of opportunity. As I have already mentioned, they think of equality of outcome. They think to establish equality in the longer run, not just equality as a practice in legal terms. That, say for example, in a queue you are waiting for some advantages, or to say in the terms of social justice thinkers, waiting for the deserts. Now it should not be like whenever your numbers will come, you will wait for this. Social justice thinkers will say that if you are a victim, like in the bill of NRC, people said that victims of these countries will be given a priority, where in the in South Asia, they are persecuted on the question of their religion. So they are offered a priority in their claim of citizenship in India. So this is the idea of equality of outcome, not the procedural equality. Next, we move on to the development of the concept of justice. Now, it started with the discussion by Plato. Plato is or should be considered as the first thinker who had provided a systematic understanding of justice in his book Republic. Now, Republic, we in today's understanding, we consider that republic is a form of government. But in his time, in ancient Greece, republic, the very word itself meant justice. And he negated in his famous book all the existing idea of justice. And he said, most importantly, he negated that justice is giving each person his due, and he gave his masterly reply that if an innocent man owns a sword, is it fair to give it back to him? He will first of all cut off your throat, whoever is trying to do it. So giving each man his due is not essentially justice. He rather said, or he talked about archaeotectonic understanding of nature of justice, and he talked about simply speaking a kind of social division of labor where each person will do what he is naturally fitted for. That means a rational person will rule. Those who are having a spirited or who are courageous, they will fight for the nation, they will defend the country, and who are having appetite for money and other things, they will be the service and goods provider. So this is his understanding of justice, where philosopher king will control the society. Aristotle provided an alternative understanding of justice. He did not discard Plato's idea of justice, but he rather provided a different understanding. He was keen to establish equality in the society, and he should be considered the first systematic thinker who talked about distributive justice. Now, his prescription to establish equality in the society, and that he understood as synonymous with justice, he said that while establishing justice or equality in the society, the state should be cautious that equality of opportunity is not important. Rather, in the long run, equality of outcome is important. So, state should treat equality equally and inequality unequally. That means if there are 4 boys whose parents' income are different types. I mean, someone is earning 10,000 per month, one is earning 5,000 per month, and 2 of them are earning 8,000 per month. So with those 2 kids whose fathers are earning 8,000 per month, there can be equal treatment. But with these people who are getting 5,000, this boy or this girl should get something more from the state. And here, if state follows a policy of inequality, that is perfectly all right, because it is ultimately aiming to bridge the gap between these 5,000 earning person and 10,000 earning person. So if you look at establishing equality, practice of inequality is okay. Now, in the modern times, we find that Thomas Hobbes started a very positivist legal understanding of justice. He said that these all discussion about justice or equality, these does not work, because finally justice is all about establishment of the positivist law in the society, and that law is nothing but the is depending on the will of the state. And if you do not if you cannot convince the state in order to establish justice, it's just impossible. Without the will of the state, you cannot establish justice. So, social justice cannot be ever against the government. And we can understand that his understanding of, or his support for an authoritarian government is reflected in his understanding of social justice too, that he wanted a very strong government, authoritarian almost, and that is why he argued that there is nothing beyond the state. And this is also reflected in his understanding of social justice. Next comes David Hume. He gave a very important understanding of social justice, and he argued, like a classical liberal, that justice or social justice is all about right to property. And he connected these two ideas. And he argued that if in a society you have no right to defend your property, it's just some possession, then it's not, there is no social justice. On the contrary, we find thinkers like Proudhon or later Marx and Engels and other socialist or Marxist thinkers who argued that these private property or individual property is the root cause of social injustice, and it creates a kind of inequality in the society that creates a kind of wrong or malpractices in the redistribution of wealth. So we can find these two extreme the poles on the debate of social justice. Now, Jeremy Bentham and James Stuart Mill, the father of John Stuart Mill, who provided the utilitarian understanding of social justice. They argued, they have always argued, that the very principle of society should be like greatest good of the greatest number. And they argued that social justice rests on that particular principle, that if there is meticulous following of this principle, that greatest good of the greatest number is followed, then social justice will be there. Now comes, in modern times, what are the who are the social thinkers and what are their prescriptions, or what did they offer? First of all, what comes to our mind is Rawls's theory of justice as fairness. We'll come to this later. Next comes libertarian theory of Nozick and Hayek. They talked about it's a kind of as you sow, so you reap. So I will also discuss this particular point. Egalitarian theory of justice, they talked about there should be an active state who takes care of the distribution of wealth in the society in order to establish equality. Communitarian critics like Sandel, they criticize all the existing theory, and they provided their own understanding that the issue of community and these should not be undermined. Feminists finally argue that all these existing theories are primarily not just anti-women from the perspective of sex, but from the perspective of gender, that these are talking about masculinity, and this is not taking care of the people like depressed women, the third gender, and their issues are not being taken care of in the study of social justice. So next comes our second part of this lecture, that is distributive justice. What we mean by distributive justice? It means that the desert that I talked about, these deserts or goods and services in the society will be taken care by the state, and state will take care of this redistribution, and they will ensure a fair mechanism in this redistribution, and they will take care of this social justice by redistributing wealth time and again through their multiple programs or through their some schemes or other policies and programs. What we see in case of income tax. What is income tax? Some people are earning, and who are earning more, they are paying more income tax. Not just like someone is earning 10 lakh per annum, so their IT deduction will be such and such. It's like more you earn, the deduction rate will be more, so that it can create a kind of, it can bridge the gap between the haves and have-nots. Someone, say for example, earning 30,000 per annum, so he doesn't have to pay the IT or income tax, and many programs will run, like we can see in our country today. There are multiple programs running on the basis of that particular tax. So this is a kind of attempt to redistribute wealth. That is the practice of distributive justice, and this idea was first uh, advocated by Aristotle. As I said at the very beginning, that you should practice, you should redistribute equality in equal way and inequality, or you should address inequality in unequal manner, so that ultimately it can run to equality. Egalitarians, they also echoed the same idea, and they said that two questions should be taken care by the state. One is equality of welfare and equality of resources. They are more specific, that equality of welfare can be, a state can have some unequal treatment when they are doing equality of welfare. That means state should take concern of the welfare of someone who is, say for example, earning 2 lakhs per annum. But they should not be bothered about welfare of the those people who are earning, say, 1 crore per annum or 50 lakhs per annum. So inequality in social welfare or this is okay, but in case of equality of resources, there should be state should take care of this, that they are trying to establish equality of resources. Procedural justice, it's sharply contradictory to the idea of distributive justice. In distributive justice, we have seen that there is an active role of state that redistributes the wealth of the society. But in procedural justice, they do not accept, particularly because they are liberals, they do not accept this active role of the state, and they consider that this is violation of individual rights and individualism. So they argue that if there are some principles in the society on the basis of which these practice will be maintained of redistributing social wealth, if that can be maintained, social justice will be maintained automatically. So their understanding precisely is, if process is okay, then social justice will be there. So if you so they focus primarily on procedure. That is why it's called procedural justice. Number one, we have Robert Nozick, who argued that, and his famous theory of entitlement theory, in his book Anarchy, State and Utopia, he argued that there are two types of principles in a society. One is historical principle, another is end state principle of justice. Historical principle is, it's like as you sow, so you reap. It argues that your actions of the past determines what you are facing today. Like if you have not prepared for the exam, or if you have not studied for the exam in the entire semester, just sitting for studying the last night of your exam will not serve your purpose. The same thing, they argue that your historical actions will determine your present situation. That is this historical principle. The next principle, that is end state principle, that suggests that there would be a set of goals to which the distribution pattern should conform. They primarily do it because they want to argue that private property or individual property is perfect. If it is not, someone has not gathered individual property by robbery or by some unjustified or not supportable means, but otherwise they support these inequality in the society, particularly because they are a believer of market economy, and they argue like, if you have not worked hard previously, how can you expect that you will get equal treatment today? So in that sense, they are pragmatic enough. Next comes the most important, Rawls's theory of justice, that he calls justice as fairness, and he represented his theory in multiple books like Political Liberalism, Theory of Justice, and finally Justice as Fairness. He argued that equality is very important, and in society equality can be compromised only for the purpose of rational justification. That is, if any marginalized people are taken care by breaching the values or principles of equality, then that is okay. Otherwise, equality must be maintained. That is the prime value of the society. And unlike Nozick and Rawls, he does not argue that inequality is fine, or if they have not worked hard earlier, like the historical principle as I have just mentioned. Rather, Rawls argued that we started, and he is a believer of contractualist understanding. He argued that we all started from original position, that he calls. And this original position, we were under the veil of ignorance, but we were not absolutely dumb. We had the understanding of primary good, and in order to maximize our primary good, that is liberty, opportunity and income, we get into this understanding of society, and that departure can be acceptable only if it is in favor of the upliftment of the marginalized people. Otherwise, if equality cannot be rationally justified, it cannot be accepted. And he gives two principles of justice, and these are to be maintained in order. When you write in your exam, please be careful about the order of these principles, because if you just write it in a scattered manner, it will not work, because Rawls categorically argued that these are to be maintained in these order only. So, first of all, he talks about liberty, and each person is to have an equal right to the most extensive liberty compatible with similar liberty to others. That is, your personal liberty or individual rights cannot be compromised. Equality must be there. Next, he comes that social and economic inequalities can be arranged in the following way. That is, to the greatest benefit of the least advantage. That is, if the marginalized section are to be uplifted, the social benefit or the maximum benefit should be devoted to them. Otherwise, there will be no social justice. And the offices in the society, the social offices and positions open to all under the conditions of free equality and opportunity. That is, these opportunities of, or deserts that we say in the jargons of social justice, that these deserts are to be open for these people. Finally, we come to our conclusion part, and we will try to understand that is this idea of social justice alien in Indian political theory or in Indian context? Why is it argued so? Because India or these land have always pursued the question of happiness or the ananda. It's not to be confused with what we call in Western understanding of happiness. Ananda, that means a kind of spiritual connection with the Almighty. So this understanding was very much spiritualistic, and they have always talked about people, not everyone. There are sages who talked about disconnection from this materialistic world and connecting with the spiritualistic understanding of Brahma. So this is a bit non-materialistic, or rather this is non-materialistic completely in some cases, and that is why this is not political in nature. See, please understand that politics can deal with only these worldly affairs. Otherwise, it's the question of spirituality, and politics is limited there. But is it the only understanding of in Indian context? Is there no alternative thinking of social justice? No. Thinkers like Chanakya, they talked about one integrated Indian polity and rest will fall in line. It's almost like the procedural justice, that if these can be established, the others will fall in line. As we have seen in case of Plato. Plato have talked about philosopher king, and there will be justice justice will follow. But comparatively in modern times, we have seen thinkers like Gandhi, we have seen thinkers like Deendayal Upadhyay who have talked about social justice in a different way. And we have, of course, seen B.R. Ambedkar. To start with Gandhi, Gandhi's understanding of Ramrajya or his understanding of Sarvodaya is all about social justice. If you look at Deendayal Upadhyaya's idea of Antodaya, what does it mean? It means the rise of those people who are marginalized. What did Rawls say? We have just seen that he is talking about the rise of the marginalized people, and the principle of equality or liberty, it can be compromised only for the sake of the rise of the marginalized. But these people have talked about this much before John Rawls. So is it really alien to India or to Indian political thought? I do not think so. In the Constitution of India, we have already incorporated this policy that some sections who are marginalized or who are underprivileged, sections like SC, ST, OBC, the offices will be open to them and they will have more access, like in the name of, like what we say in reservation. This is the actualization of the principle what Rawls said in his theory. And B.R. Ambedkar incorporated this particular principle of social justice much before John Rawls. So I do not think it will be so judicious or it will be so wise to label Indian political thought or Indian political practices that we never had social justice. It's not an alien concept. Even in today's India, when we say Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, it also talks about a kind of social justice. So with this note, I would like to end this lecture. Thank you. Thank you very much.